so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Jew. The truth has shared so much of itself with me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman, an angel, or even pure soul. Love has befriended Hafiz so completely it has turned to ash and freed me of every concept and image my mind has ever known. May all I say and all I think be in harmony with you, God within me, God beyond me, maker of all. Amen. Well, the quote that I started with comes from the 14th century Sufi mystic Hafiz. I read it and it described to me an evolution of faith that actually resonates with my own journey. I too cannot call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Jew. My own journey, my own evolution of faith has, I suspect, not been unique. Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, a contemporary Sufi, writes, "The Sufi says that there are three journeys: the journey from God, the journey to God, and the journey in God. He says that the journey from God is the journey into exile, in which we come into this world and forget our real nature, our real home." He describes his own beginnings this way: "I had been traveling this journey of forgetfulness for 16 years, not even knowing there was a journey. Born into a middle-class English family, I had gone to church every Sunday and read from the Bible. I had sung hymns and recited prayers, but nowhere was the slightest suggestion of spiritual life, of any reality beyond the world of the senses." Pretty harsh. But I have to say that this journey is amazingly similar to my own. Like Mr. Vaughan Lee, I spent the first years of my life forgetting that I had indeed come from God, forgetting that I was a child of God, created in the image of God. It's interesting. Children know that this is true. But as we grow up, are socialized and taught, many of us lose this awareness. I too went to church as a child, the Episcopal Church, every Sunday. My parents were Sunday school teachers and members of the Altar Guild. I attended Sunday school, and eventually I took my first communion. Now, I have to say that the first communion was the first ritual that I had ever experienced at church that actually reminded me that I was God's child. We received training from a group of nuns at a convent in the town where I lived. And it was there that I experienced a sort of spiritual awakening. I got a glimpse into what a spiritual life would look like, and I liked what I saw. Yet, I was not particularly drawn to the idea of celibacy and a sheltered existence. Thinking this was perhaps the only way to actually have a spiritual life, I continued my journey of forgetting. Unfortunately, this also coincided with the beginning of my love affair with drugs and alcohol. I continued to go to church, feeling a vague sense of belonging, but my spiritual journey really did not progress. I was actually still running from God until I found the resources and the faith to change my life. I shared last week about a new job that I have, working with homeless and formerly homeless individuals. And it is there that I am reminded every day that many, many people are still running from God in all walks of life. People are battling health issues, addiction, and circumstances such as war and extreme poverty. And they're doing it alone. They have lost faith in life. The question is then, what makes some people wake up and begin to see that they're running in the wrong direction, that there is a higher power who is ready and willing to help, an eternal presence that we can depend on? Well, for me, this didn't happen until about 10 years ago. This is when I began my journey to God. I experienced a gradual spiritual awakening that little by little squeezed the drugs out of my life. In the end, I had the realization that the addiction was coming between us, between God and me. I saw that I'd never find my way back home unless I quit. I am extremely grateful that I woke up and began my journey to God. But what was it that brought me through the storm of recovery? What is it that brings any person through these times of extreme conflict? Last week, if you were here, you heard a definition of conflict from Sobonfu Some, an African teacher. In case you missed it, it went like this. Conflict is a wake-up call sent by Spirit to remind us of the purpose we are here to fulfill. It is seen as a blessing. It should not be nurtured. It should be listened to, and proper steps should be taken to address the spirit behind the conflict. So, it's all right to have conflict. Yes, indeed, it's Spirit's way of waking us up. If I hadn't been conflicted, I never would have woken up and begun my journey to God. Yet, we do have to know what to do to deal with it. Well, in recovery, I learned what to do. I had 12 steps, and I had other addicts in a community. I learned that there were people in that community that already knew how to find support and stability through stormy times. I listened to those people. The community also taught me to pray and meditate, something I hadn't really learned to do in those many years of attending church. Through my newly found focus on prayer and meditation and my subsequent study of world religions, I embarked on a journey that has often led me away from the tradition of my childhood. I've undertaken a journey through many different traditions and have found that part of me belongs to each one of them. The words of Hafiz with which I started really reflect this experience. And it is perhaps Hafiz's own tradition, Sufism, that most speaks to me, perhaps because it reflects an interfaith understanding. A mystical form of Islam, Sufism now has a lot of followers in the United States. Through practices such as what's called zikr, or remembrance, people can find their way back home to the heart. This is just one meditation, but it's a really awesome meditation, the zikr. To remind myself, I did it yesterday. It's almost an hour long, which is kind of pretty hardcore for a meditation. But I think that sometimes we've lost sight of the effort it takes to connect to God, especially in our society today, especially when we're so busy. I'm one of those people. So my zikr, my remembrance yesterday, was really wonderful. And it's this meditation and others like it, doesn't have to be this one, doesn't have to be from this tradition. Christian traditions also have plenty of meditations. But it is these spiritual practices that can serve to feed our resources, our inner resources in times of calm. When we have times of calm, we're not involved in conflict. There is no storm. This is the time to store up our reserves. These practices can actually deepen the area of fundamental integrity within our soul so that we're ready for the storm. We're ready for the conflicts. We're ready with the strength needed to deal with them. Well, it sounds like I've already made it spiritually, huh? But if you were thinking that, you were wrong. I was very recently given an excellent opportunity to test out all of this theoretical talk about inner resources in times of conflict. This past week, I came home from work one day, and I said to my poor son, who was sitting there, I think I'm having a crisis of faith. This, coming from his mother and a minister and teacher, was probably rather alarming for him. I don't think he thought I could have a crisis of faith. He listened while I told him my thoughts. I had had a really tough week at my new job. On Monday, the fire alarms were being tested all day long. The almost constant ringing not only drove me crazy, but it put all of the students on edge. Now, these are students that are already on edge. These are people who live on the street, okay? They're already on edge, and they come to our program with the hopes of finding some calm and some peace. Well, they didn't find it that day. The next day, we had some extremely challenging students come in. One of these became verbally and then physically violent. And as the education manager, I was called to kick them out. I found that my spiritual resources were failing me. I had failed to store up enough strength in the quiet times to see me through these crises. Even though I had learned many spiritual practices, I'd forgotten to practice them. Well, another part of my crisis of faith this past week was that I felt like I had no definite tradition to turn to. Because I do not belong anymore to a particular denomination or even a particular religion, for the first time I felt like perhaps I didn't belong anywhere. There was no tradition that I could authentically call upon to help me in my time of need. Well, with the help of my spiritual advisor, Nick, who I was talking to, I sure know why I had children. I had to wake up and remind myself of that moment that I spoke of last week, the first time that I came to Fellowship Church. I described it as an extreme sense of belonging. Came in the back of the church, sat down, and said, well, this is it. I was so relieved at the time that this is a non-denominational interfaith church. I felt that I was free to explore various traditions without feeling like I was betraying my own tradition. Well, since that first day, 8 or 9 years ago, I've seen that that is exactly what this place has been for me and what this place can be for other people. After I was able to reflect on all this with Nick, my crisis was calmed. I realized that I had to get back to the spiritual practices that strengthen my integrity. I had to remember the foundation of faith that began when I was a child. I had to claim the validity of my own spiritual experience. I had to listen again to the words with which we start this worship service. We say that the service is designed to deepen the authentic lines along which your quest for spiritual reality has led you. Well, I spoke them, but I didn't listen to them. I had to realize that this is indeed the place where the strengthening of faith can happen. This is where I can move to that third journey, the journey in God. Now, this third journey is a journey that I feel that I've only caught small glimpses of. It is a journey that demands a tremendous amount of faith. Enough faith to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. I was reading about faith, and I came upon a quote from Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, "A person who does not have anything to believe in is without energy. When you have the energy of faith in you, your steps become firmer, your look becomes brighter. You are ready to love, to understand, to help, and to work." I like that. Because this is what I had been experiencing. A lack of energy to deal with my work. And this meant that I had a lack of faith. I learned that I need to nurture that faith. I need to feed those resources so that I'm ready to love, to understand, to help, and to work. Another way to feed this faith, to help the resources grow, is to expose myself to the lives of other people who know how to find that support and stability in the storm. One such person, and I had just read her book, how soon we forget, is a person named Wangari Maathai. She's the woman from Kenya who won the Nobel Prize. I recently read her book, Unbowed. It is an awesome recounting of her journey as a child from rural Kenya to an internationally acclaimed environmentalist and pro-democracy activist. It is the lives of people like this that can inspire us to be better people ourselves. We can also be inspired to keep trying, even when the going gets tough. Maathai worked tirelessly, and in reading her book, there were many times I thought, what's the matter with her? She has to give up now. But she didn't give up. Despite being a woman in a patriarchal world, despite being a rural African, she just continued to work day in and day out for the betterment of her country and the betterment of the entire world. She must have made it to that third journey, the journey in God. And it's this journey in God that has become problematic for me. If we are walking already with God, if we already belong to God, the question is, do we still need to belong to a spiritual community? Well, I think all of you know my answer is going to be yes. We still need the strength and power of community. We needed to become ready to understand, to love, to help, and to work. It is not only about us as individuals and our spiritual journey. As long as we continue to think that it is, our communities will not grow, and our community problems will not be solved. There is a reason we come together, just as millions have come together before us. We come to strengthen ourselves for the spiritual journey, for the everyday stress and strain. We come to understand and to be understood, to love and to be loved, to help and to be helped. But we also come to work. Being in community gives us strength not only to help ourselves, but to reach out to others beyond our boundaries, unknown and undiscovered brothers and sisters, to achieve our common goals of social justice and peace. And don't be fooled, this is work, this being together. If we think it is a given, a ready-made group of people, a social club, then we will be sadly disappointed. In order to reap the benefits of community, we have to work together through the conflicts and through the peaceful times, through the storms and through the sunny weather. It is only then that we will individually and collectively be able to keep before us the moments of our high resolve. That in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, may we not forget that to which our lives are committed. Great Spirit of the universe, loving, ever-present God, to whom we belong, we pray that you enable us to keep fresh before us in this beloved community the moments of our high resolve.